You feel alone when you go into these things, but when you leave, you come out as family. And we were nervous going to the very first one. But like I said, by the time we left, we had so much information and met so many friends and made connections that now, a few years later, we have people that we consider family all over the country.
Welcome to Boundless B, the Hemophilia B podcast, the podcast standing with you from a family like yours, presented by the Coalition for Hemophilia B and in partnership with Balancing Life's Issues. Today's guest is Mandy Aberegg, a mom, a fierce advocate, and a powerful voice in the Hemophilia B community. Her journey has been anything but easy, but it's one that shines with strength and courage. This episode is about resilience. It's about learning how to fight for your family, even when you don't have all the answers, and about what happens when you find the courage to show up, speak out, and build a community around you. Welcome to the podcast, Mandy.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Well, it's nice to hear from you from Southern Ohio, you said?
Yes, or Shady Side, Ohio is where I'm from.
Fantastic. So I guess just start by telling our listeners a little bit about your family history when it comes to Hemophilia B.
We did not know that hemophilia was in our family at all. And what we know, there is no signs of hemophilia in our family. When Cooper was born, it was a surprise. And then I had genetic testing done that I must be a spontaneous mutation.
And so tell us about finding out how your son had it.
When Cooper was born, they did the vitamin K shot and he busted open about 3 times, a couple times on nurses that it bled out on their clothing. And one time he bled out all down the front of my mother-in-law's shirt. And we thought it was odd, but nobody said anything. He stopped. But the next day when he was circumcised, they took a very long time when they took him away. When they brought him back, the nurse had a look of fear on her face and she's like, I got to take him back. So then I got up and I went down and I said, what is going on? And they're like, we can't get his bleeding to stop. He won't stop bleeding. So they ended up using nitrate sticks on him to burn him. And it got down to oozing. And then that's when I said that we needed to have blood work done to see what was going on.
And that's how they came across the Hemophilia B diagnosis?
Well, at that point, the evening the pediatrician came in and he looked at us and said, something is wrong with your son. And he kept saying oncology/hematology. And all I heard was oncology because my mother passed away when I was 3 from brain cancer. So, of course, that's what I only heard. And he just said that they wasn't sure what it was. But then by 4 days old, we were up at Pittsburgh and they told us that he was a moderate hemophiliac. But really later on, we found out he is a severe hemophiliac.
So I guess as a mother and first-time parent at this.
Yes, 26 years old, first child. Our first child, we had a miscarriage. So then we got pregnant with Cooper. And, to have this little baby and to find out, first off, he's covered in bruises, and it wasn't nothing that anybody did, but just the normal, smack in the back of a child when they're born. He's covered in bruises. They're telling us something's wrong. It was like, we always say he came in like a tornado.
So I guess tell us about emotionally, that experience at that time, and what was that journey like in those initial years of Cooper's life?
It was like you were always on guard. Like it was just... It's hard to explain. Like, it was just like life was moving so fast. And like, in a way, you were kind of standing still and everything just kept going. And like my husband and I, we were trying to figure everything out and take the information in. And my husband laughs about it now, but we came home and we bought a notebook and we literally wrote every question you can think of about a child with a bleeding disorder. And now looking back through the questions, they were funny. But at the time, it just shows you how 2 young, scared parents were and wanted to know how that they could raise a child with hemophilia.
And I know this story is so familiar to so many people, but we know there are listeners out there who might be experiencing this for the first time. So tell us about, wanting your family to continue to grow. Like, was there reservations about continuing to have more children?
No, we always knew we wanted at least one more. And not that it wasn't there. We talked about it. We knew it was a 50-50 shot, but we really did want another child. And we thought that we had, I don't want to say the hemophilia under control, but we thought we could handle if we had another child with hemophilia. We met other families that had more than one child with hemophilia. So then that's when we decided to go ahead and have another child.
I mean, so what was that journey like, especially I think as your daughter came into the world? Were there any complications with hemophilia?
So when we found out we were having a girl, part of me was a little like, I want to say took a breath, because I thought, well, then she more than likely won't have hemophilia. And because we were always told it, and that's what's hard in the community now, is a lot of doctors say that women are not bleeders.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept telling me that her factor level would be high. We don't have nothing to worry about, because my level was higher. And she was born, and we waited a couple months, and then we had her tested. And unfortunately, she was like 27%. So she is a mild hemophilia mild hemophilia B. And it's a little bit different. It's a different journey, and maybe even a harder fight with her, because we've had to fight to get factor and doctors to listen about her.
And that's a big part of this message is advocating for your children in the doctor's office when they can't really advocate for themselves quite yet.
Yes.
And just to go back a little bit, there has been a lot of work is being done in the women's and hemophilia B community to remove the stigma and to remove the blind spots in the healthcare community about the fact that women don't bleed, because they in fact do. Tell us about how advocating for your children, in these initial years of their lives got you connected to the Coalition for Hemophilia B.
So a dear friend of ours told us about the coalition. Our son was 8 years old, and we reached out. We went to our first meeting, or to our first symposium, and it was amazing. We met so many people. Everybody was kind. They kept coming up to us, asking, our names. And, at that time, we did not take our daughter because she was only 3, but we took our son. And it was just amazing, because everyone wanted to know like his diagnosis, and we've heard different stories from different individuals, and it was just so welcoming, and it was empowering, because we went into this one room and they were discussing about, and they were like, does anybody have any questions or anything they want to ask the doctors or people that were speaking? And I stood up and I asked, should my daughter have factor at home? And there's like 800 people in the room, and every single person said yes.
A resounding yes.
It was yes.
Yeah.
And I literally, after we were done with that session, I went out, I sat down, I called my HTC, and I'm like, I need a meeting with the head doctor next week. And I did have a meeting with the head doctor at the center we went to, and my daughter had factor then at the house on hand. Wow. And if it wasn't for them pushing me and making me feel like I could make a stance to get it, I don't even know where we would be.
Yeah, and I think what you've done is you've highlighted so beautifully what the Coalition for Hemophilia B does, right? It welcomes you into a community, and then it educates you on what you need to know so that you can then advocate for your children or yourself with the doctors who are in charge of what you need, right, for a healthy, long life. So I think I wanted you to just maybe talk a little bit about the uncertainty and the nervousness of going to the symposium for the first time, because I know for a lot of families, it's really difficult to go. And if you have any advice about getting yourself to step through that door and get yourself out to one of these community events.
To be a part of the community, like when you start going to events, I know it's overwhelming, because you think, oh my goodness, what are they going to, what am I going to learn? Who am I going to meet? You feel alone when you go into these things, but when you leave, you come out as family. And we were nervous going to the very first one. But like I said, by the time we left, we had so much information and met so many friends and made connections that now, a few years later, we have people that we consider family all over the country. So it's important to help your child to definitely go, or yourself, if you don't have children, to go to these events, because they're only going to help you. so you can help yourself, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so well said. So I guess as you continue sharing what you've learned, can you share some maybe some things you wish you knew from the beginning that you now know? Maybe specifically over how to talk to the doctors, or maybe insurance coverage, proper medications, maybe how to get your voice through those channels so that you are being heard?
I think and that stems back to going to events. I think it's almost you have to know you have to know the information before you go in, especially with a doctor. Like if you go to an event and you hear about that there's different products or this and that, it's nice that you have the different pamphlets or things that you can go in and show them what you learned at the events. And I think it's important to always write everything down. So when you go in the room, you might get flustered and not know what to say, because then the doctor's going to be like, well, no, this is what we need to stay on and this and that. And I understand that they have the degree, but that doesn't always mean that they are correct. And they need to be able to listen to you. And if you have everything written down and ready, then even if you get a little flustered, you're able then to settle yourself and go back and read what you need to them, so you can get your point across.
Yeah, that's really smart. And, not for nothing, when our first child was born, I did have a list of things that I was supposed to say, because I knew my wife would not be in a position to advocate for herself necessarily. And I was going to be way too emotional and a mess to be able to eloquently get a point across, right? So I did have that list. So yeah, very, very good advice there. Something we talked about, before we did this recording was what you tell new families about building a plan. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Things to help your children is camp. Camp is a huge thing with my children. They have learned so much at camp. They've made close friends. They learned how my daughter is still learning, but she ended up pretty much sticking herself for the first time at camp. My son has been from symposium and then also at camp learning how to infuse himself. And it just builds confidence and know that they're not the only ones out there. And I think with the school, it's kind of the same way. When you take the information to them and fill them in on what's going on, and your kid feels strong enough too that when they can go into the classroom, like Cooper has went in and told his friends about hemophilia and spoke to his class about it. And my daughter has said things to her friends. It just helps. It makes them feel, one, not alone when they go to camp and different things, but also proud of themselves. Like, yeah, they have this, but they show how they can push through and they're still a normal person, even still having, hemophilia B.
Yeah. And I guess maybe talk a little bit about, as a parent, what that feels like, because we know that's a huge transition for parents. There's going to come a day where your child is going to be closer to an adult and they're going to have to do all of this on their own, right? So I think even at this early age, maybe you start to see some of these signs of ownership. Can you talk a little bit about that just as a parent?
It is, I would have to say it's a double-edged sword.
Sure.
Because I'm very proud of my son. I know that if he had to do it, he could do it all on his own, which is wonderful, and I'm proud of that. But also, it's hard too, in a way, because this has been his whole life is what we have done. This is how we do it, and then to hand the reins over, it's hard. But you want that, because I want him to live a full life and know how to do it and travel and live on his own. He has to know how to infuse.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, well, thank you so much for being here. And I guess if you could just leave listeners, or maybe with some advice about what to do when you feel overwhelmed, maybe what you would have told yourself back at the beginning of this, now that you know what you know now.
I would have to say definitely join the Coalition for Hemophilia B. I wish I would have known about them earlier on, because I wouldn't have felt so alone, my husband and I, and we would have been able to maybe direct how things were going earlier on in my son's care if we would have had the community that we have now. And the friendships that we have are very dear to us. So I would say, even if you're not able to come to a coalition meeting, if you're not ready for that, at least go to your local chapter and start going to events, because having people that live similar lives and understand what you're going through is very important.
Well, thanks again for your message. And this has been Boundless B, the Hemophilia B podcast, the podcast standing with you from a family like yours, presented by the Coalition for Hemophilia B and in partnership with Balancing Life's Issues. And don't forget to check out hemob.org. There's all kinds of amazing resources, but specifically, you can navigate to upcoming events to check out what kind of events are happening so that you can get involved in the community. And thank you again for your time, Mandy.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Until next time, everybody, take care. This episode of Boundless B, the Hemophilia B podcast, presented by the Coalition for Hemophilia B, is made possible in part by the support of CSL. We thank CSL for their continued commitment to the bleeding disorders community.